Hi everybody, it's Lindsay with High Altitude Astrology, and today I'm bringing you a chart reading of Demi Lovato. If you want to follow along, she was born on August 20th, 1992 in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and her birth time is 8:02 p.m. Demi Lovato is a singer and actress, and she had sort of her breakthrough time early in life. I would say, I think she was probably in her mid-teens, and it was with a movie called Camp Rock, where she was a singer and an actress in this particular movie, and it really kind of skyrocketed her into the spotlight. Well, it's been revealed that actually during that time and around that time, she was struggling with addiction issues and really came to a crisis point with it all, with her management team. And she just recently put out, like within the last month, a movie about it. And it's on Netflix, and it's called Simply Complicated. And she discusses that time in her life and her struggle with addiction and where she's at with it in her life today. So I wanted to look at her chart to find out more about, where these aspects of her herself show up in the astrology. So looking at her natal chart, she's a Leo sun, and a lot of Leos are our entertainers because Leo is the energy of wanting to be seen. It's the sun radiating through the sign of Leo. And Leo is a fire energy, so it's about being inspired and expressing our inspiration through our creativity. And a lot of times Leo energy, as much as it likes to shine, it also really appreciates or responds to being recognized and being seen and being noticed. So that's why the career of being an actor or being an entertainer is often associated with people who have strong Leo energy in their chart. Now, her natal sun is interesting, though, because it's a part of a T-square with the moon in Taurus and with Pluto in Scorpio. So when we think of a Taurus moon, that has to do with our emotional response to the world, how we instinctually respond, our ability to nurture others around us, what makes us feel comfortable and secure. And for somebody with a Taurus moon, that means we really do appreciate the very practical things in life. That's what makes us feel secure. So it can be money, it can be being able to surround ourselves with comfort, things that make us feel comfortable. But Taurus also brings in the experience of worth, our value, our personal value. So when you've got that moon in Taurus squaring the sun in Leo, it could potentially bring up some sort of conflict within ourselves, because as we're expressing our solar energy, it's like the lunar energy kind of doesn't work as easily with that solar expression. So perhaps this could be somebody who has self-confidence issues, where you might think, oh, somebody with a Leo sun doesn't have any self-confidence issues. They want to shine, they want to be seen, but with a square from that moon in Taurus, what makes us feel secure, it suggests that perhaps there's an issue or that needs to be resolved around the self-worth and the ability to feel that sense of security through the self-worth in our lives. And especially because in this T-square configuration, Pluto opposes that moon and squares that sun. So whenever we have and it's Pluto in Scorpio. So Pluto in Scorpio actually is in its sign because Pluto rules the sign of Scorpio. So there is some strength in the Plutonian energy in her chart, but in this configuration, it's suggesting that part of her journey in life, and T-squares often are what we sort of have to struggle with early on, and then we kind of get more comfortable and more familiar with the energy, and we learn how to work it out better in our lives. So certainly she has dealt with this Plutonian energy as a part of this T-square with her sun and moon in her chart, starting at an early age. And this is significant because the sun and the moon are the two strongest energies of our chart. And here they are in this stressed configuration with Pluto in Scorpio. So Pluto has to deal with this ability to, and this necessity to go through this process of transformation in our lives and learn about the process of transformation. And often the process of transformation can start with resistance. You know, we don't want to do it. It's scary, it's uncomfortable. It means letting go and giving up certain compulsions and certain habits. And especially Pluto in Scorpio opposite Moon in Taurus. So Moon in Taurus can be our habits. The moon has to do with what, you know, our habits that we pick up. And so in Taurus, it's something fixed energy, you know, it's something very, in some ways, kind of resistant to change. Taurus likes things to be the same, but with the Pluto opposition from that moon, it means that we are really going to be asked in this lifetime to embrace change and to embrace transformation. And I know she's also had issues with addiction to food. She's openly talked about struggling with bulimia, and the moon also deals with our eating habits. It rules our stomach, but it deals with our daily patterns, and also literally especially with the moon in Taurus, our food habits. So to have Pluto opposite that energy of the moon in Taurus can suggest that there is very directly a challenge to her habits, and the need to really bring in the quality of transformation around them. And then with the Pluto squaring the sun in this configuration, again, this is suggestive of the solar energy being involved ultimately in this process of transformation and regeneration. And it can mean, though, that there's a challenge, because with the square from Pluto to the sun, with the square, it means that it can be difficult to integrate the two energies together. So, you know, she's very much admitted that in the beginning part of addressing her challenges in life, you know, she was somebody who wanted to hide it from people. She was somebody who just at times didn't care what people thought about it, or didn't care what she, you know, the effect she had on people. I mean, partially because she was actually, you know, under the influence of things, but that moon squared Pluto, with that sun squared Pluto, it's like there's a need to learn how to integrate the process of transformation into how we shine out into the world, into our creative expression. This is somebody who's very powerful and has a lot of energy available with that with that sun squared Pluto to actually put her energy behind things. But first, it's about, you know, working out how to harness that Plutonian energy, that Plutonian power, without it, you know, being harmful to other people. Because that's really the lesson of Pluto. It's about learning how to direct our energy appropriately, so that we're not harming others in the process, and that we're thinking of the group, we're thinking of society, rather than using that Plutonian energy in a more selfish way that only focuses on our own needs or our own desires. All All right, so she does have some other interesting energies in her chart. She's got a beautiful grand trine with that moon in Taurus, trining her Venus in Virgo, as well as that Venus conjuncting Jupiter in Virgo, and then trining her Neptune conjunct Uranus. And to me, this is indicative of her musical ability. Sometimes people say that to have moon in Taurus, because Taurus rules the throat, that there can be musical talent. But then with it to trining Neptune in Capricorn, you know, Neptune has to do with our creative expression. Neptune has to do with our imagination and accessing those subtle realms of creative expression. So I feel that the moon trining Neptune in Capricorn, you know, working hard, gives her this musical ability, as well as trining the moon, trining Neptune, Jupiter, the moon trining Venus, Jupiter conjunction in Virgo, and the Neptune trining the Venus, Jupiter conjunction in Virgo. And again, so this is basically an earth trine, so it's going to deal with the earthly realm, deal with the material world in its expression. And to have Venus, which is symbolic of the creative expression and our values, conjunct Jupiter, the principle of expansion and luck, but also wanting to, you know, really just grow and expand anything that it touches, means that she's got a lot of creative energy here with that conjunction between the Venus and the Jupiter in the sign of Virgo, being exacting, you know, being very thorough, being very helpful, and being very, in some ways, of service to others, which perhaps maybe is an aspect of her life she will connect with as she grows older, because oftentimes these trines in our chart blossom the longer we're around, and the longer we sort of begin to understand these particular energies that often come easier to us in life. That's why sometimes they can almost go untapped, because it's like it's just something that we're used to because it's always kind of there. So that's a couple of the major grand trines in her chart. Now, something else that's interesting about her chart is that she's got her Mercury conjunct Chiron in Leo. Now, to have Mercury conjunct Chiron in Leo, also I want to mention that it's opposed Saturn in Aquarius. This could also relate to some of her health challenges that she's had, because Chiron in Leo, that's like there's a wound. There's a wound around feeling our creative expression. There's a wound around feeling our vitality and our strength through our creative self. And it's next to Mercury, which has to do with communication and our thinking process. So this is, and it's in the 6th house of our health and of service, but and our work. So there, even though she's a sun in Leo, it's like there's something there with this Chiron in Leo conjunct Mercury that maybe makes her feel wounded. It makes her feel around the self-expression. You know, it makes her feel somehow that she actually can't quite connect to that self-value or that self-worth or that belief in the self. She's probably just really super hard on herself, I would imagine. Because also it's opposed the Saturn in Aquarius. And Saturn in Aquarius, you know, Saturn has to do with our lessons in life and our work in life and where we have to focus our time and where we have to focus our attention in order to build foundation and build structure. And it's in Aquarius. And that's, you know, that's the energy of the humanitarian. That's the energy of others, of social, you know, justice or of focusing on the whole or the group. So that's where she's got to kind of learn in life to focus in order to be able to create foundation and structure in her life. So really what this opposition could suggest is that even though there is a wound around the self and the expression of the self, really what it's suggesting is that it's important for her to work at at being more of a humanitarian, to focus on the whole or the group, so that she can actually feel better about herself. There's been some interesting transits that have been going on in her chart, and this is why I feel that perhaps this movie has come out right now where she's really revealing a lot about herself and about her struggles, but at the same time she's in a good place where she can really talk about it and perhaps offer inspiration to other people because of what she's been through. So she's been having transiting Pluto sextiling her natal Pluto from February of this year through November of 2019. And again, that natal Pluto is at 20 degrees of Scorpio. And transiting Pluto is in Capricorn also, sextiling that Pluto. So this is basically just saying that there's a lot of opportunity for transformative experiences for her right now. And of course, it's setting off the T-square in her chart, the opposition from her moon and the square from her sun. But what's also interesting that it didn't say before about her natal chart is that Pluto sextiles her Venus-Jupiter. You know, and Venus-Jupiter could be somebody who, through her creative expression, Venus, she shares a bigger perspective with people. That's Jupiter, is expanding perspective. It's about our belief systems. So maybe what it's suggesting is that right now, with that transiting Pluto sextiling her natal Pluto, setting off the sextile to her Venus-Jupiter in Virgo, in the 7th house of relationships, that she's able to share about, you know, in a way that expands other people's perspectives, in a creative way that expands other people's perspectives about what she's gone through in her life. And you know what's interesting is it's also, in that movie, she talks about kind of being on her own at this time, not being in a relationship after having been in one for a long time. And with this sextiling, transit Pluto sextiling the natal Pluto, setting off the sextile to her Venus-Jupiter conjunct in Virgo in the 7th house of relationships, it could be just helping her kind of go through a transformative process in relationship to relationship at this time in her life, and allowing her to really heal and understand more deeply what it is she really needs in order to feel good in relationship. She's also having transiting Neptune sextiling her Uranus, and this started in March of 2018, and it's going to last until February of 2019. So transiting Neptune through the sign of Pisces, it's moving through her 1st house. It's sextiling that Uranus in Capricorn in her 11th house. And this could really be just helping her at this time. Neptune is that energy of spirituality and of transcendence, sextiling the Uranus, the awakener, the energy of sort of shocking insight. Could basically just mean she's going through a time where she's connecting more to some sort of spiritual perspective that's helping her, some sort of insight that's waking her up and allowing her to grow and to see new ways of looking at life at this time. Also, transiting Uranus in Aries is trining her North Node. So Uranus is moving through her 2nd house of values, and her North Node sits in her 10th house of career in the sign of Sagittarius. So really, she's in this lifetime with the North Node in Sag to experience a lot of expansion in her life through philosophies, through perspective growth, and really to kind of have a good time, you know, to really enjoy life and appreciate life and learn a lot. And so with Uranus trining her North Node at this time by transit, through her house of values, it could suggest that she's really able to gain a lot of insight at this time about the ability to enjoy life and to expand her perspective around things in life. It could also suggest that, you know, her values, these sort of like values that deal with being kind of a rebel and being kind of a somebody who's liberated in a sense, is trining that North Node in Sag in the 10th house of her career. So she's almost like able to share at this time this new perspective, a new philosophy that's awakening not only in her own life, but that could perhaps help others at the same time. And she's got a couple of Jupiter aspects going on in her chart right now. She's having transiting Jupiter conjunct her Pluto. And again, that Pluto at 20 degrees Scorpio, right on the cusp of the 9th house of philosophies, to have Jupiter, the planet of growth and expansion, and Pluto, the energy of death and transformation and regeneration. So it's setting off really an opportunity, I guess, for growth here for her. But again, you know, it's setting off that T-square in her chart. So it's, you know, perhaps bringing up these issues of the need to, you know, transform and to grow in relationship to her habits, in relationship to her self-expression. And at the same time, though, you know, Jupiter is lucky. It is about growth. It is about expanding our minds. So it's not necessarily a negative thing. It's just to have it on your Pluto. Pluto takes us deep, and it wants us to transform and to grow. And this transit of Jupiter on her Pluto is happening from January of this year to September of this year. So it's actually a really interesting time for her to be coming out, I feel, with this movie, because this movie has this theme of like really deep transformation of the shadow and of the struggles of the, you know, of the challenges that lurk in the unconscious. And I would say Jupiter on the Pluto really helps us to connect with those deeper parts of ourselves and to go through that transformative process. And in the movie, you can see she's also been getting into martial arts, which I could see with having that Jupiter going over the Pluto is a really good way to focus that Plutonian intensity, and a great way to learn about the transformative process, because in martial arts you really have to learn about respect. You have to respect the opponent, and as much as you're dealing with this, you know, really deep fighting energy, it's contained in this structured way of expressing it through the martial art form. She's had progressed Mars move into the sign of Cancer. Her natal Mars is in Gemini, and now it's moved into the sign of Cancer. And this is interesting because natal Mars in Gemini is about asserting oneself through the, you know, thought process and through communicating and through movement, going here and there and socializing. And you know, it's an earth, I mean, it's an air energy, but to have then your Mars move into the sign of Cancer, that's the energy of self-nurturing and of feelings and of deep connection to our intuitive self. So it's interesting that she's having this planet of action and assertion now moving into a new sign in her life, where perhaps her focus on how she wants to go about getting things deals with the more kind of sensitive and intuitive expression. And finally, she's had a few solar arcs happening. She's had solar arc Mercury in Gemini squaring her Jupiter. She's also had solar arc Jupiter in Libra trine her Saturn. Solar arc Jupiter squared her Uranus, and solar arc Uranus in Aquarius opposite Mercury. And really, when I look at all of these as a whole, it just suggests to me that she's really growing a lot in her thought process, in how she's able to take what she's learning and really to apply it to her life, and continuing to find new ways of looking at things that are continuing to open up for her in her life at this time. And finally, really kind of challenging or offering the opportunity for her to have great insight at this time, to really understand more about her truth, and how she thinks about her life, and basically where she can grow, and how she can incorporate kind of connecting more with who she really wants to be in this lifetime. So thanks so much for watching. If you like my channel, please subscribe. I also do offer readings, and you can reach me at info@highaltitudeastrology.com. Thanks so much. Adios.